Welcome to this explainer on the profound philosophy of adventure. Let's just dive right in, shall we? As philosophers, we share this innate drive to uncover the underlying essence of the human experience. And today, we're not talking about adventure as mere entertainment. We're not talking about ziplining on some vacation or backpacking through Europe just to say you did it. No, instead, we're embarking on a rigorous, existential journey to uncover what it truly means to step beyond the familiar. We are going to explore the architecture of risk, courage, and human becoming.
So we have to start with this central, really foundational Socratic question. Does adventure happen outside of us or within us? Colloquially, we tend to just equate adventure with tourism, right? Moving our physical bodies through physical space. But I want to challenge you to think phenomenologically here for a second. Is the true landscape of adventure the external world, or is it actually the internal terrain of the self confronting the unknown? This single question basically frames everything we are about to discuss today.
Here is our roadmap for this explainer. We'll trace a dialectical progression through 6 stages. First, the ontology of the unknown. Then, risk and courage, freedom and self, encountering the world, the ethics of adventure, and finally, wonder and flourishing.
All right, let's jump into Section 1, the ontology of the unknown, or the essence of adventure. Our source material offers this really profound definition to ground us. It defines adventure as the human act of stepping beyond the familiar into uncertainty in search of discovery, growth, meaning, and transformation, a movement of the soul. I absolutely love that phrasing. So the crucial point here is that adventure begins exactly where certainty ends. It's not fundamentally about traversing geography. It is the soul's intentional relation to the unknown. When Socratic ignorance teaches us to admit, "I do not know," well, that right there is the very spark of adventure. Moving on to Section 2, existential risk and courage. Let's look at the actual cost of departure.
Now notice the contrast here. Facing the proverbial flaming beast isn't about the total absence of fear. It brilliantly illustrates Aristotelian courage. We so often mistake courage for complete fearlessness, don't we? But true courage is entirely different. Based on Aristotle's doctrine of the mean, courage is the virtuous response to fear. It sits precisely in that sweet spot between the extremes of cowardice and mere recklessness. Taking action despite feeling the profound, heavy anxiety of departure, that is the true ethical core of stepping into the unknown.
And this brings us to a beautiful insight. As Soren Kierkegaard suggests, the existential leap fundamentally requires risk. Why? Because the certainty we all crave so much is a total illusion. It's literally never complete. Channeling Kierkegaard, we can see that a meaningful life simply cannot exist without risking the comfort of the familiar. Risk gives our choices their seriousness. It is the ultimate proof of what we value enough to endanger our own comfort.
Next up, Section 3, freedom, anxiety, and self. Let's examine the inner subjective experience.
Our source makes a vital point here. Human beings are not fixed. They become themselves through choices. So the key takeaway here is Sartrean freedom. Adventure is a fundamental refusal of passive living. When we step out of our daily habits and routines, we are thrust into this radical freedom. And this means we are entirely, completely responsible for what we choose to become as a result of the journey. Adventure is the active practice of that freedom.
But we have to be careful here. As we see in the contrast between the mirror of authentic struggle and the empty crown of vanity, well, not every risk is noble. True adventure acts as a mirror for authentic self-discovery. It forces us to confront our real fears, our weaknesses, and our resilience. False adventure, on the other hand, is basically just vanity. It's ego, or perhaps escaping responsibility disguised as courage. Constant movement just to avoid real life? That's not an adventure, my friends. It's a retreat.
All right, Section 4, Encountering the World. Let's talk about cultures and wilderness.
There is a really vital hermeneutic distinction to be made here between tourism and genuine encounter. Notice the isolated bubble of the tourist on one side versus the grounded connection on the other. Hermeneutics teaches us that true travel expands our understanding by bringing our own limited horizon into direct contact with another world. It requires the traveler to be a learner. Tourism, though, merely consumes places for entertainment, leaving the self completely unchanged. True encounter absolutely demands a willingness to be challenged by the world. And this naturally brings us to the structural universality of adventure, which is so well captured by Joseph Campbell's hero's journey: departure, trial, transformation, and return. We leave the known, we endure trials, we face our symbolic monsters, and we are fundamentally transformed. But pay special attention to step 4, the return. Paul Ricoeur's concept of narrative identity reminds us that the trials we endure only find their ultimate meaning if we integrate them and return, bringing that hard-won wisdom right back to our daily lives. Without the return, the whole adventure is incomplete.
Moving into Section 5, the ethics of adventure. Let's look at how we navigate the unknown.
Let's examine these ethical frameworks, because let's face it, adventure does not give us a free pass on morality. When encountering people, we must apply Kantian ethics, treating others with respect and dignity, which is a bit ironic, given Kant rarely ever left his hometown of Königsberg. But his imperative absolutely holds true. We must never treat people or places merely as props for our own personal adventure narrative. When facing nature, environmental philosophy demands humility in the recognition of limits. We seek reverence, not domination. And internally, well, virtue ethics requires prudence to guide the self away from sheer recklessness.
Now, let's contrast the macro-mythic journey with the phenomenology of ordinary life. Consider these everyday adventures: starting a new job, studying an incredibly difficult subject, beginning a relationship, changing your deeply held values, or engaging in the intellectual adventure of philosophical questioning. These completely ordinary acts require the exact same courage and openness to the unknown as climbing a physical mountain. Actually, thinking against the crowd and daring to change your own mind might literally be the greatest intellectual adventure of all.
And finally, Section 6, Wonder in Human Flourishing, the Adventurous Life.
Consider this truly profound summary from the source material. Adventure is the soul's journey beyond the familiar, where fear becomes courage, uncertainty becomes discovery, and life becomes larger than comfort. You see, the ultimate goal of an adventurous life is not just seeking out constant danger. It's about developing a character defined by open Aristotelian wonder. As we know, philosophy begins in wonder, and adventure is the mechanism that keeps that wonder alive, actively resisting the numbness of absolute routine.
Which leaves us with this final, lingering question. What kind of person is formed by a life open to adventure? I want to end this explainer on a bit of a Socratic aporia. I invite you to reflect deeply on this. How is your willingness, or perhaps your unwillingness, to engage with the unknown actively shaping your existence? The good life isn't just about comfort. It is a meaningful, courageous movement toward truth. Keep questioning, keep exploring, and thank you so much for joining me on this explainer today.